Anthony and Felice, it is now 6:30. So do you want to give it a second or do you want to get started? Anthony, say something. I can't.
Yeah, I can't hear you either.
I'm going to wait until Anthony gets his sound figured out. But I guess while we wait, I will give everybody a little bit of instructions on how the Zoom meeting works. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. You'll notice that right now you're muted, and you're going to stay muted through the duration of the meeting, except for whenever one of the co-chairs, Anthony or Felice, calls on you. Following MSK's presentations, the co-chairs will call on members of the public who wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon on your screen and pressing the raise hand button. It's not the wave and it's not the thumbs up. Those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute whenever you're called on. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the co-chairs calls on you. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support only. It is not to ask questions of the co-chairs or the presenters. They will never see those chats. But if you're having problems with Zoom, you can always chat me. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you may need to go to the participants section where you'll find the raise hand feature there. And then finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen. We might miss you and not be able to see you. So if you're having problems, chat me. I'm here for support. And with that, I think Anthony may have figured out his sound.
Hope so. Can you
hear me?
Yes, you
did. Yes. Wonderful.
Awesome.
Much better.
Okie doke. All right. Welcome. This is the first meeting of the MSK Pavilion Task Force of Community Board 8. We welcome, I and my co-chair, Felice Farber, welcome you. And we are going to begin this with a presentation by MSK. And I think for introductions, it's best to have Shelley Friedman, who is their legal counsel, make the introductions for this portion of the program. Thank you. Go ahead, Shelley.
Shelley, you guys will need to, there you go.
We good?
Yep, you're great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony, and good evening, everyone. I am going to immediately simply turn this over to Dr. Drebin, who is the acting president of the hospital and the chair of the Department of Surgery, and he will begin the presentation. Dr. Drebin, please.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all again today about Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center's need for the Pavilion Project. I'm Jeff Drebin, and by way of reintroduction, I'm the chair of the Department of Surgery, and currently I'm the acting president of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, where I oversee a team of world-renowned surgeons, medical oncologists, radiation therapists, and scientists, all of whom focus on advancing cancer care today and developing the new therapies of tomorrow. Can I have my slides up? Or is that? There we go. And we could probably go to the next slide, please. So I'm joined today by, oh, there we go. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues in the Department of Surgery, Ginger Gardner, who is not only a superb gynecologic oncology surgeon, but also the vice chair of hospital operations, and Yesenia Valentin Salgado, who's our director of nursing and perioperative services. And you've already heard from Shelley Friedman, who is our counsel. My colleague, Dr. Lisa DeAngelis, and I had the chance to provide an overview of the Pavilion Project during the Zoning and Development Committee meeting a few weeks ago. And I'm grateful tonight we have the opportunity to provide a deeper dive into the purpose and necessity of the pavilion. Next slide, please. This shows our upcoming task force schedule. This meeting tonight is part of a series of meetings we have planned with Anthony, Felice, Russell, and Will. These meetings will take place over the next few months, and we will address the issues, questions, and concerns of the community related to the project. Our goal in these meetings is also to clarify the often mystifying Euler process and break down jargon-filled words into plain language that we can all understand. As a layperson to the world of city rezoning projects, this is something I know I will personally benefit from. Most importantly, we look forward to sharing the vision for this building and collaborating with you to ensure the new building will be integrated into our campus and the community, one we are so honored to be part of. Together over the next few months, we'll address a host of issues that have been raised by the community. These include issues related to transportation, environmental impact, housing, streetscape, light, the appearance and mass of the building, and the duration and the community impact of the construction period. Next slide, please. Our meeting tonight will focus on further explaining the need for the pavilion, including the capacity and future use of the facility, patient transport, and the need for the patient bridge connecting the pavilion to the current Memorial Hospital. More importantly, I'm also excited to connect you with two of our top clinical leaders who can share firsthand experience on what it's like to deliver cancer care to New Yorkers and shed some light on why the new pavilion is so important for the future of cancer care. To dive into this, I'm excited to be joined by Ginger Gardner and Yesenia Valentin Salgado, who will provide you with a sense of what a day at MSK really looks like. Next slide, please. I know they can speak from experience about many of the points that Dr. DeAngelis and I raised the last time we spoke with you regarding the necessity of this project. For example, the CDC projections we spoke about in our last meeting, the 50% increase in cancer cases we expect to see by 2050, including about 40,000 new cases per year in New York City, aren't abstractions. This is a tsunami of cases that are on their way and in fact are already on our doorstep and in our operating room. And lest you think this was hyperbolic, if any of you bothered to go to the American Cancer Society website, you'll see that 1 in 3 was actually somewhat conservative. The American Cancer Society says it's 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women. Again, we've tried to be very truthful in the information we're giving you. In addition to the increased incidence of cancer and preparing our facilities to handle the volume of patients, I want to stress how we treat cancer continues to evolve and for the best. Due to the advancements in cancer care, we're curing more patients than we were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, about a third of patients with cancer were alive and cancer-free at 5 years. We're now over 50%, and we expect that to increase. One of our goals is not only to deliver the best care today, but even better care tomorrow. And the pavilion and the 28 operating rooms that are planned there are one of the critical steps that will allow us to achieve that goal. I also want to touch on something we mentioned last time, which is the growing complexity of cancer cases due to our rapidly aging population. Complexity leads to longer case duration. Our process engineers actually tell us it takes 5 to 15 minutes more per year to do the complex surgeries, which we're doing better, but not necessarily quicker. In fact, quite the opposite. To do them as well as possible often takes longer. But the beauty of that, of course, is that people are living longer and we are doing a better job of curing people. So we know the surgeries of the future are going to be more complex and demand more technology and inpatient time. And that's why it's so critical that we're able to add to the current infrastructure that we have for surgical care at MSK. I want to end on a personal note. Over the past 20 years, I've seen incredible gains in how we treat and cure cancer. And Memorial Sloan Kettering is at the absolute forefront of that, offering New Yorkers the very best cancer care in the world. The pavilion will ensure that the next 20 years, and really the coming decades beyond that, of cancer treatment, research, and innovation continue to be led here in New York City. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Yesenia. In addition to her 20 years in nursing and her role with perioperative services, Yesenia has been an integral voice in our pavilion planning process and also serves on the Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Council here at Memorial. Jess.
Good evening, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to be able to be here and speak with you today. My name is Yesenia Salgado, and I am the Director of Nursing for Perioperative Services at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, located here on main campus at the Upper East Side. And just for some context, for those who may not fully understand what a perioperative nurse encompasses, it refers to nurses who work in operating rooms and care for our surgery patients. Perioperative nurses are involved in all stages of caring for our patients from the time they come in for their surgery preoperatively, and then within the operating room, and then throughout their stay in their recovery space. I've been with MSK for more than a decade now, and it's a privilege and an honor to work alongside a dedicated team who is at the forefront of leading edge cancer care and research and committed to delivering the best possible outcomes and highest quality of care to our patient community. Having worked at numerous other healthcare institutions throughout my 20+ career, including here in the city, I can personally attest to just how integral the patient care experience is here at MSK. Simply put, MSK puts patient's care and patient experience first. We know that better patient experience deliver better health outcomes, and that's one of the main points that I want to talk with you all about this evening. I know that Dr. Drebin has already provided a brief overview, both in this meeting and previous ones, about the necessity of the Pavilion Project and how it's going to meet that evolving cancer care needs of the future. But I think it's worth repeating two key points about the changing landscape of cancer now and in the future to come. First and foremost, the demand is increasing. And as you've heard, the CDC estimates that annual cancer rates will increase 50% by 2050. That's that tsunami that Dr. Drebin referred to earlier. And my team and I are already starting to see this on the ground with our community here today, and surges that are stretching our current capacity. The second point I want to reiterate is about the changes expected in the acuity of cancer care. As our patients get older, they will require more complex care, but we're also already seeing a rise in the incidence of prostate, colon, and breast cancer among the younger populations today. So when you combine this increasing acuity with the expected increasing demand of cases, the end result is that our current facility is simply just not equipped for the volume of patients nor the treatment procedures that our patients need. I hope the confluence of these problems makes clear why the Pavilion Project is an absolute necessity, but I also want to speak specifically about why the envisioned design and infrastructure is also critical and imperative. This brings me back to my earlier point about patient care, because the entire design for the Pavilion Project was done with that in mind. Every piece, from the number of operating rooms to the patient bridge, was created to provide a more cohesive model for our patient population. That's why from the second this new building opens its doors, our patients and their families, each and every one of you on the call, are going to know and feel like the building was made just for you. The bridge specifically will allow a seamless transition between both treatments and recovery and will enhance that patient care. I don't like to see this personally as an expansion, right? As someone who's worked here and is part of the project, I see this as part of the services that we are already providing to New Yorkers. And that's how I envision this project. If we didn't have the bridge, it's not the employees and the providers who would suffer, but it's our patient community, because we may not be able to provide them with that immediate care that they need. One metaphor to illustrate how patient care would be impacted if we didn't have a bridge is simply by imagining how an elevator at peak traffic times slows a person down. We all live in New York City. How many of you have experienced the consequences of a busy elevator during lunch times and break times? It can disrupt workflows and processes dramatically and slow you down greatly, right? Well, when you're trying to help someone, every single second in our world counts. And when it comes to acute care like cancer care, it's critical that your resources are close together, which is one of the many reasons why it would be impossible for the new pavilion to be anywhere other than right here on our main campus. As far as MSK employees go, we're stronger as a team when we're closer together. That's why I don't want the community to think of this project as an addition to Memorial Hospital, but rather as an extension of our hospital. We'll still be providing the same high level of care that we're providing now, but we'll be growing and expanding that care to meet the evolving cancer needs of tomorrow. Which brings me to my last point regarding the necessity of 28 operating and procedural rooms. Right now, almost 20 years out from those CDC predictions about the increase in cancer cases, we're already seeing our surgical volumes at record levels, and they're only growing. We need these additional rooms to meet this increase in demand and be equipped with the right resources. How else will it be possible to keep making headway in cancer treatment and achieving our goals and meeting our hospital mission? We also need these rooms to be spaces where patients feel calm and soothed. And as a provider, I have seen firsthand how this can take away the anxiety for our patients and greatly improve healthcare outcomes. I want to conclude by reiterating a main point that I hope you take to heart. The new pavilion project is not for us as in MSK employees, but it's rather for our patient and our community. It goes without saying that MSK provides cutting edge and innovative cancer care that goes well ahead of the curve. But on top of that, MSK truly is special in creating and fostering spaces similar to those that you've seen at Josie Robertson Surgical Center and at the Koch building that provide the best possible experiences for our patients. And this new pavilion will be no different. As someone who has been involved in the planning of the project, I can say that every aspect of the project was designed with the needs of our patient community, future and present, in mind. And I hope you will keep them in mind too when considering our proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jess. One little question. Looking forward a few years, what's the most exciting thing that you see in the future of cancer care?
Most exciting. So I honestly look forward to seeing how innovation and new technology, up to and including how we can leverage the use of artificial intelligence even, and how that will interface with not losing that human touch and that nursing care to be able to push our mission forward in cancer care.
Thanks, Jess. Next, I'd like to go to Ginger Gardner. In addition to her role as a terrific surgeon, Dr. Gardner serves as one of the leaders of our Patient Flow Command Center, which is really the nervous system of our hospital operations that keeps track of rooms and patients who are waiting for beds in the recovery room or in our version of an emergency room, the urgent care center. And Dr. Gardner will be able to tell you a bit more about what she's seeing on the ground and why the pavilion is so critical to the continuation of her work. Ginger.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Drebin, and thank you for your time here together this evening. Feel free to take down the slide because I just want to be with us together. I'm Ginger Gardner. I'm a GYN oncologist with over 20 years of experience in the care of women with ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, and other gynecologic malignancies. As a surgeon, I perform approximately 250 surgeries each year at MSK. Some people ask, why do you do this work? I'm a cancer surgeon because I feel that's where I'm needed. There's an immediacy and an urgency to the work I do and to the work we do as an organization. For me, I love the technical precision that is surgery. There's a clear problem, cancer, and there's a solution, surgery and treatment. As an art history student back in college, I appreciate the beauty of the moment in surgery, to remove what is a devastating disease and to restore the beauty of normal health and anatomy. In addition to my work in the operating room, I have a strong commitment to research in ovarian and uterine cancers. I've received funding from the Foundation for Women's Cancer and the National Cancer Institute for my research into these diseases. And I work each day to move the needle in the innovation that we can provide in this field and to teaching the next generation regarding the nuances and the intricacies of complex pelvic surgery. In every facet of my work, patients tell me how unique MSK is, and I not only believe it, I feel it. From the commitment we have to an individual patient's needs and to our pioneering work in research and innovative treatments. What I'm personally struck by each day is the compassion of our organization. Cancer is often a life-altering event for patients at any age. It's an emotional journey, and it's one that requires a full team and full support. That's why I strive to form a relationship with each of the patients that I meet, to make sure that they hear that I'm listening carefully, thinking about the individual need of a targeted treatment that will work for their disease, to the unique emotional challenge of facing a cancer diagnosis, and the personal experience that their family of loved ones, spouses, daughters, sons, brothers, sisters, and other caregivers. That compassion in our work is truly fostered by the leadership of this institution. It's encouraged, and it's part of the daily fabric of our organization, and I couldn't be more proud. So in addition to my surgical care of patients, teaching and research in women's cancer, as Dr. Drebin mentioned, I'm also the medical director of what we call the Patient Flow Command Center. It's actually really the nerve center of our clinical operation. Our team in the command center works 24/7 to align the most appropriate bed placement for every patient that needs our inpatient care team. Whether the patient is coming out of surgery, is coming in for a life-saving medical therapy, or has other inpatient needs. Every patient coming into the inpatient bed at MSK, that placement is routed through the command center. It's really the nuts and bolts of the operation. I'm very honored to be the medical director for our command center unit. Every day when I walk into Memorial, I see the urgent need of the patients that we treat. And I see the hope that we provide. For each patient, for our providers, and for our community, this work is tough, but it's in this work that we have hope and our future. I was at a meeting yesterday, and the head of our clinical research arm said, and appropriately said, we are providing tomorrow's treatments today. That is the hope we provide. In my field, in ovarian cancer, it's a combination, it's a teamwork of surgical therapies, surgical interventions, and medical therapies. And at MSK, with the incredible teamwork, we've had over 30 new drug approvals in medical therapy for the spectrum of cancers that we treat as an organization just over the last few years, approved by the FDA and now fully and regularly available for all. Notice I said medical therapies, not just chemotherapy, because we're finding innovative ways to enhance the immune system, to move to more innovative treatments to cure cancer for all our patients. Similarly, for surgery, tomorrow's treatments today means new surgical approaches, small incision surgeries, enhanced image-guided techniques that allow us to provide more targeted approach to the surgical dissection, as well as many other surgical advances that not only cure cancer, but also have a meaningful impact in living past a cancer diagnosis and looking at opportunities for long enduring quality of life for our patients through surgical innovation and enhanced techniques. So to do this work as an organization, it's not a job, whether it's the team cleaning the room, whether it's our transport team, our leadership in nursing, our physicians, it's a calling, and it takes commitment every day throughout the organization and over many years. And that together is what provides our hope for each other, for our patients, and for our community. So why do we need a pavilion? We all need hope. We provide hope with tomorrow's treatments today, and our pavilion of tomorrow will simply allow us to continue to do so. As mentioned by Dr. Drebin and Yesenia, we have many challenges as we face the future of cancer care. The rising number of cancer patients, even in our own families and our own community, is a challenge. Further, we're working to incorporate new strategies and technology in surgical approaches. As we deconstruct cancer care, we are developing new care delivery models. As some of our patients are fortunately able to now receive treatment in outpatient settings, as Yesenia mentioned, that means that the acuity of the inpatient environment is escalating. And we have to be prepared for all that is in front of us. Through all of this work, we work to support our patients and families in their journey. And for all these reasons, We need our pavilion of tomorrow to continue to deliver on our promise and to provide the hope that our patients and our faculty and our providers truly need. So I'm just going to close with a big thank you. Thank you for being with us here tonight. Life takes surprising and unexpected turns, and we simply need each other. We need hope, and we need the promise that our future holds. It's truly an honor and a privilege to work in the field of cancer. After this session, I will go see my patients upstairs, and I'll be with them in this moment tonight, knowing that the promise of our future, our research, our innovation, our compassion, and our commitment, as enabled by our pavilion, will simply make all the difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. You know, as we look back, I'd like you to think a little bit and tell the group assembled here tonight, you know, if we look back 20 years, there were no iPhones. I think it's amazing how technology advances in a very short period of time. But when you began in 2003, Dr. Gardner, how would you compare what you did in surgery to what you do now?
It's such a great question, Jeff. Robots were just coming onto the scene. Now they're in everyday practice. Technology that enhances image-guided surgery is phenomenal. There's an agent that we use as an injectable called ICG or Firefly. And literally, we can see through tissues to go and follow the lymphatic pattern or the transit. It's like the Google map of where those cancer cells can go to find the first draining lymph node and to remove that with precision rather than removing 30 lymph nodes. And you can imagine the impact of that in the pelvis and for the legs, mobility, and the risk to the vessels and bleeding. So there is just, it's incredible how much has changed even in my tenure. And I'm so excited with all that is in action and in our work currently to see what is to come.
Thank you. And we're trying to look ahead and imagine what will be there in 10 or 20 years for us. I'm actually not in the room with my colleagues because I'm attending the American Surgical Association meeting in Toronto. If I took down this Zoom screen, you'd get to see Lake Ontario outside my window. And I want to apologize in advance. I'm going to have to sign off at 7:45 to attend another meeting at 8 o'clock, but I know my colleagues will be able to stay on for any remaining questions that have not yet been addressed when I have to sign off. And that concludes the presentation portion of our evening. And I'd like to turn the meeting back over to Anthony and Felice to take us into the open forum.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Drebin and Dr. Gardner and Nurse Valentin Salgado. We appreciate the presentation very much. And I am sure as I stall for time, people will queue up with comments and we can call on them and begin this portion of the program. But so far, nobody wants to talk.
Yeah, just a reminder for Anthony's sake and for everyone else's sake, if you want to participate, you can look for the reactions icon on your screen, press that, and there will be a button that says raise hand. And if you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute whenever you're called on.
Okay, and we do have someone. So Alita.
Thank you. I had very selective hearing for your very eloquently phrased presentation, and it reminds me of when my kids were younger and the school psychologist or some psychologist came and said, if they ask you if you ever took drugs, never say yes, but, because they will hear nothing but the yes. All I heard was how fast cancer rates are increasing. And so I'm wondering if for the community, part of what you are planning is more public resource space, like for educational programs or clinics providing cancer screening for people who cannot afford regular hospital or physician rates, those kinds of things, so that people are their knowledge is broadened in a way so that maybe they can not fall into that 50% statistic.
So I can tell you, one of the things that came up at our last session was the Affordable Care Act, sometimes called Obamacare. And someone asked, when are we going to start taking it? We take Affordable Care Act. We, as I mentioned in our last session, lobbied the New York State Legislature to make sure we could take Medicaid managed care and Medicare managed care, which previously, because they wanted to save money, would not contract with Memorial Sloan Kettering. So we are committed to serving all our patients and not simply those who are the best insured. In terms of the community, we are starting more screening programs. We're particularly interested in screening high-risk individuals, and with advances in molecular genetics, we now have a better understanding of who's really at the greatest risk for cancer, and are implementing programs initially in that population, which we hope will be able to broaden out for others. I don't know if my colleagues have additional comments.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And I've actually raised the same question myself, because I think that community space where we can come together and talk and educate about cancer is so important. We host, in the professional arena, we host medical education events where other physicians come, and that has been a tight resource. So I've been asking the same question because I share with you the importance of talking about cancer broadly with colleagues and community, and the importance of doing so, especially with the anticipated rise in cancer incidence in the coming year. So thank you for that question.
If I could just follow up really quickly, it's not just the Medicaid and the Medicare, and I do remember that from the last presentation, and I think that that's really terrific as costs escalate, and there's legislation about transparency, but whether it's possible to provide free services for people who otherwise can't afford it. I guess you're asking for something from the community, which is an increased, large, bulky presence in the neighborhood, and whether in terms of giving back, other than the excellent care that you provide, and I know that you do, is educational or screening programs to help tackle things that may be found earlier for people who otherwise don't have the insurance, or for just helping people understand that it might be certain issues, diet or social determinants of health, or something else that they're doing or could learn from. It's just I guess a give back to the community, but I'm not sure if you answered it. I see other people have raised their hands, so I'll end there, but just asking you to think about ways to provide those kinds of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Alita. And next we have Michelle Birnbaum.
Thank you, and thank you for your excellent comments and presentation. Thank you for being there. Memorial Sloan Kettering is a valued part of this community, and not only this community, but the entire country. So we are very grateful to have you in our community and in our presence tonight. Can you talk a little bit about how the plans you have presented to us specifically work and attend to the new goals that you have set and expressed tonight? In other words, how the architecture, the building, the size of the building, show us, if you can, bit by bit, how it facilitates your future goals and what it is replacing, where if what is there now were kept in place, your goals could not be met. So if you can sort of meld your comments into your architecture and your construction and your flow and all that to help us better understand tonight. You did that in a past session, but this would be more specific and we would have more time. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you for your question, Michelle. Oh, Dr. Drebin, please.
No, I was just going to say the building really is not a replacement. I think it's very important. The term that was used, I think, during the introduction was an extension. And right now we are not at capacity, but we're not far from capacity. And I think the projections, what we're seeing now is, every so often we have a really busy day where we are just packed. And that's only increasing with time. And when we look at cancer rates, it's going to go up even more. So we're not planning to decommission or close our existing space. We are hoping to be able to take one 25-bed floor per year off service to renovate it in terms of air handling, convert some of the double rooms, which we still have a lot of, to single rooms, which are much better for the immunosuppressed patients in terms of infection risk and isolation. But we're not planning to downsize our existing hospital with this new facility coming on board. It's really an extension of that facility to allow us to, I think we last time talked about the need for, we have operating rooms now with MRI machines, CAT scanners, biplanar vascular CT scanners. The robots that Ginger mentioned were one of the biggest places for robotic cancer surgery in the world. And all of those things take space. So in our new operating rooms, as you talk about the architecture, part of it is it's just to be able to have the space to have all this technology where we need it. In terms of the patient rooms, again, they're not luxurious, they're not enormous, but they are adequate, and they are being designed with patients in mind, with the idea that their families and their care teams need access, and patients who are recovering from surgery or from bone marrow transplant or other complex operations and procedures need that sort of environment to heal.
So thank you for that. I understood that this was not to be a replacement for your current facility. I understood that this was an expansion. And I understand that you are expanding the amount of equipment that you have. You're increasing the number of OR rooms. You're moving towards private rooms, and all that needs space. What I was hoping you could address is sort of meshing it's like with a computer, talking about the hardware and how it encompasses the software. If you can mesh your size, how you expect the flow to happen, why you need, how high the ceilings are, where will this increase, how will this improve your circulation, patients who may or may need access to the blood bank or care or infusion centers, that kind of thing. In other words, how this building, the way you have proposed it, as an addition to your current facility, how that helps this flow, and how you decided on the number of square feet and the bulk and size for this building to accommodate those needs. How did you make those decisions with the expectation of putting all this together? If you can give us some insight into that, I think it would be helpful. Am I making myself clear? Or am I too obtuse?
Yeah, no, Michelle, I don't think, just hang on a second, guys. Michelle, I don't think you're not being unclear. I think in a way that this is really intended to be the topic of the next meeting, where we were going to talk about the architecture and the architectural response to the need. Now, having said that, and I know Shelley is champing at the bit, or I imagine he is, I think that one thing we might talk about now today is the sort of, you're not decommissioning parts of your hospital. You may be somewhat repurposing parts of the existing hospital. I see a nod, but the question that I think would be good for us to, the issue that would be good for us to talk about would be, by how much are you increasing? In other words, I don't know how many beds you have now. And with the shuffling of 25 rooms per year being converted, modernized, and maybe in some ways downsizing in terms of beds, where are we ending up? And part of that is my ignorance and having no idea how many beds or operating rooms you have now and what your ultimate goal is and how this fits in, which is not an architectural question, but really in a way has to do more with how you want to deliver this better care.
We envision with an increase in patients that patients with cancer requiring surgery, requiring complex care, that we will need more beds than we have today. And as I mentioned, we're frequently, Ginger can tell you, the patient flow command center is frequently, like moving the peas around on the plate to make sure everyone has a bed. And we're able to do that, but it's becoming challenging, and we have no doubt it will become critically challenging if we don't have incremental space. Shelley can correct me, but the issues of how many beds, I think, is a state subject to state regulation, and we're not yet through that process.
That is correct. There will ultimately be an application to the state to consider the number of beds total in the institution. There's a license cap. We can certainly bring that information with us when the architects discuss on May 4th. The architectural response to the program that Dr. Drebin and his colleagues are discussing tonight, and we would make sure that Michelle's questions can be addressed at that time.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley, because I think that's kind of what Michelle was getting at is. You want this to have 200 beds. Is that net 200 more, or does it end up, because I understand it isn't, but sort of where do we end up? Not to say that's at this point more than interesting, but I think it's something that would be helpful. And the same thing with the operating rooms, as they have to be. The old ones have to be repurposed and enlarged, or not repurposed, but enlarged. I understand. I think we all understand that. Thank you. Barbara.
I would just add to that, if I may, in my work in patient flow over the last 7 years, we've seen a couple of things happen. One of which is that more inpatient care is able to be delivered in the outpatient setting, and we've really moved with the times on that. And yet, that means that those that need our inpatient beds are some of the sickest and complex care needs that you can imagine. So part of the need is that. The other thing I'd just like to highlight is, for a number of years, we've been working from within to work towards process improvement and efficiencies that are patient-centered in our care delivery models. So what does that mean? That means coordinating the team and the structure of care around the patient to support an earlier hospital discharge so that the next patient can come up more smoothly, as one example of many. But what that means is, over the last at least 5 years that I've been involved in the work, we have launched and successfully accomplished a number of internal efficiencies, not looking at it as we want to drive efficiency, looking at it because it's the right thing to do for patients. And it's a patient-centered opportunity for high-quality patient-centered care. But the corollary to that is we've been using our inpatient stack even more efficiently for the space that we currently have. So we've been working internally on that front. I just wanted to share that effort that's been ongoing and continues to be ongoing as well.
Anthony, if I could, just as a placeholder until we can resume this conversation in May, I just want to observe that this building has been designed by the doctors and nurses from the inside out. Its core need is for 28 operating rooms. To correlate to the capacity issues that MSK sees coming in the future. From the 28 operating rooms, we generate a need for approximately 200 beds to support the activities of those 28 operating rooms. And then there's additional support space to support those 28 operating rooms. Just to put a finer point on it, there is nothing else in this building but the 28 operating rooms, the beds necessary to support it, and the support spaces necessary to support the doctors and nurses delivering care. That is it.
Thank you, Shelley. Actually, that's that's I think a very good way for us to look at it. That in effect we are building, or you are asking to build 28 operating rooms and all of the things that are that grow out of having those. I appreciate that. Okay, Barbara.
Well, the first thing I was going to ask has been answered, and is it the increase that sort of is demanding this? So I won't even ask that anymore. I will ask a little bit more. Are doctors' offices? I first of all want to start off to say not only thank you for your presentation, but unfortunately, a very personal thank you that I have, and I'm sorry that I have to give you that thank you, but I do. Are the doctor's offices going to be in the pavilion? So when you visit your doctor, you go in for your 6-month exam and all of that. Will that be at that building, or will that still be at the existing building?
The current plans really don't call for any outpatient space within the building at all. It's all needed for inpatients.
So that will give more room for it. Something that I want to say to the lead, and I want to know if you agree. I did ask my oncologist, why are there so many people coming? Isn't that sad? And they said, no, it's good news. It means people are living and they're coming back constantly for exams. So
that is true. That is true. Even the patients who we are curing more people, but even people we're not curing are living much, much longer. But that does require coming back and forth. It requires hospitalizations. Much of the surgery we do isn't, although the best way to be cured of cancer is to have surgery plus chemotherapy or radiation or all three. We often are doing surgery 2-3 years after someone was initially diagnosed for a complication related to their cancer or it coming back. Right. And so the number, as you say, it's not just, we don't just get to treat a patient and then say, goodbye and good luck to you, as you might be able to if you do a knee replacement, with no disrespect to my colleagues across the street at HSS. But our patients do have recurring and ongoing needs for care, and we're committed to being able to provide.
Just follow up, even if things are good, but just follow up. I have just a couple of questions that I hope are appropriate for now. When I hear single beds, I'm very concerned about insurance. Will Medicare, Medicaid insurance pay for a single room?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, they will. This building is being constructed with current code, which you cannot build double-bedded hospital rooms under current standards.
So the price you give to Medicare or to an insurance
is a standard price. There's no increased revenue expected from that.
I have a friend that's doing wonderful work. Her daughter, unfortunately, was part of your hospital, and they're doing work supporting children that have cancer every day. One of the things she mentioned is parents need to live someplace, and they give up their businesses. There's always a money aspect to it because their lives are so turned around to take care of their child. Do you ever think of a place of housing people? I know you have a hotel, but that costs money and it's really not for long term. Could that be part of the pavilion or anything else like that?
Again, the pavilion, we're really,
but
if we could build it twice as high, which would generate a whole lot more people on this call,
we may be talking to you about that, right?
We could put in some offices and some hotel space. I don't mean to sound flip.
I know, but I don't. I
Really have planned
Is
it
that an issue that you think about? Because it is an important issue for
No,
families.
absolutely. And we have, there are hotel facilities. There's a Ronald McDonald House and so on. But it is no doubt a challenge.
Right. Okay.
I'd
thank
like
you.
to follow up on that question, Barbara. It's such a good one. We're starting to really explore the term we use is financial toxicity in cancer
Yes.
care.
Mhm.
And it's a real thing. Our team and others at this institution are looking at that because we need to be studying that. That is important. And we need to be able to identify where are the most important pinch points for patients to be able to drive solutions. And I'm talking about solutions for all cancer care. Obviously, we start at home at MSK. But there's actually a burgeoning whole field of research dedicated to financial toxicity of what does it mean to the pocketbook of an individual patient and their family to carry one of these diagnoses. And it's a real thing. So really, thank you so much for that important
Well,
question.
somebody that you probably know, but could introduce you to.
Yeah, and you're right about the volume. So what we talked about earlier is the volume of increasing incidence, but you're bringing out a really important point. We are definitely seeing, we have cures, we're celebrating that. We also have those patients that are living longer with a diagnosis. And so we weren't even talking about that at the beginning, but that's another volume impact to our inpatient environment where patient may have a recurrence and be living with a recurrent diagnosis. And that is also further sort of ballooning some of our projections and some of our inpatient needs. So very, very important point. And thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Barbara. Marco is next. You could unmute him.
Thank you, Anthony. First, let me tell you one thing. I don't know how to express myself for your humanitarian service doctors. Sometimes I feel ashamed to say anything to you because you offer a great service to the community, a great service for the humanity. I don't have no doubts of your professionals. On the contrary, I'm very impressed. I congratulate all the doctors, including the nurse too. Being said that, Dr. Drebin? I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name.
No, you were.
I feel ashamed if I do a doctor that. But the question, where are you? I'm sorry. In what part are you?
I'm in Toronto.
Oh, you are in Toronto. Thank you so much. You see how the technology bring us everywhere. So that is one point that I had to keep in mind in our discussion. Technology allows, there is no distance anymore, doctors. I think we are in agreement, no? That space do not exist anymore, I think.
Well, that's true for you and I having this conversation. But if you were to be sick and you needed a nurse to come in and see you, having her come in on Zoom would not be good. And I can tell you, you were very polite in complimenting the doctors, but I want to emphasize Yesenia is here and she and I spend a lot of time working on the operating rooms together. But the nurses at Memorial Sloan Kettering are our secret sauce. The care, everyone who winds up staying, almost everyone who stays at Memorial has a terrific experience. And believe me, it's not our 50-year-old existing rooms, floors, beds. It's our great nursing staff. But those nurses have to be able to come into your room. They have to be able to see you. So I know where you're going with the question about Zoom. but
yes,
I'm
doctor.
I'm not going to bite on it and say we could just put the hospital up in Westchester.
Okay, don't go ahead of me, please, doctor. Don't go ahead. Well, you're absolutely right. So let me ask a quick question. But you describe curative medicine. How about preventive medicine? Do you do something in that direction?
We do. We actually call it cancer interception, which maybe is a more dramatic term than prevention. But we're again trying to do this with groups of people who we know are at the highest risk. Smokers for lung cancer. We know a lot of genetics that put people at particular risk for breast cancer, for ovarian cancer, prostate cancer. And we do have programs for both treatments that may be preventive, as well as in some cases surgery that is preventive. So there is a lot of work being done in prevention. I would say we still have a ways to go.
Okay, now let me say the metaphor that the nurse Valentina said. A late elevator, that means slow down. And what? Every second count. Is that correct, the quote that I did? I guess
Every second in an emergency, yes, does count.
Yes. This is extremely important for you too. The only thing I'm going to say is, if a patient is coming by car and the counselor is very well aware of that, you know that we have a serious traffic problems that going directly to the hospital. And I live in 81st Street, and the congestion or the stifling congestion is coming from the hospital to 81st and 82nd, even 83rd Street. So if every second counts, that is my question. This is not a question for the doctor to answer, because this is, but the point is, and that is my concern, the point, every second counts. You're right, and I agree. And that part we have to keep in mind. And I don't want to, Dr. Gardner, if I pronounce properly your name, I don't want to take your time, because you said that you are very busy, and that made me serious concern, because this is not important. The important is your patient. Doctor, thank you so much for this the presentation, and always I appreciate your service. All doctors, included the nurse. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco.
Marco, let me just say that at our next meeting, we'll be able to show you the work that's taking place about making sure that while there's little we can do about the existing traffic situation, we are working very hard to make sure that we don't add to it and that we can work around it for the benefit of the arrivals and departures of the patients. There's a lot to be said on that subject, and we look forward to being able to present it to you, at a future meeting.
Great. Thank you, Shelley. Ed Hartzog.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Shelley, and thanks everybody at MSK for being here. I'll be very brief. But I wasn't going to ask about this, but just to be relevant, and Shelley, appreciate the offer coming back with more info on the traffic for later, not for tonight, but for down the road. I know you still haven't forgotten when we were doing the project at 62nd Street and the traffic we were talking about on York Avenue down there. And I know that there's an ongoing project. I don't know much about it in front of that building there. And it's been there for years and going on. And I'm sure that this project will impact that, or they'll intersect in some way, no pun intended. My point being, or question is, if you could come back, if, address that or have something ready for that, because I'd be interested to know with respect to traffic, how that's all going to impact from, when they get off the drive to up where you all are.
You've got it, Ed.
Thanks, Shelley. I appreciate it. But as to what we're talking about tonight, I don't know anything about programmatic needs, and I know better than to even begin to ask about programmatic needs around cancer care treatment, because it's just my question is, when I heard 28 operating rooms, I thought of two things. I thought of, wow, is that driven by we're having more cancer in New York City, or is it driven by More people are finding Sloan Kettering, and they're coming to New York because it's so good, and it's one or the other. And the increase in rates, I guess it's more of an observation. I was struck by the 200 support beds. I don't know if there's a way to make it not so many, because it's the bulk of this building that has struck me, and that's not for tonight. But I know, of course, we've talked over the years about many projects with Memorial Sloan Kettering and other hospitals in the neighborhood, and the floor plates at 20 feet and that kind of thing. I'm just curious as to whether or not there can be some efficiencies with space or with beds, because just observing in general, more nationally, is healthcare. What strikes me in one way is the fact that, other than this recent spate of inflation that we've been going through, we've had a pretty steady, unlike back in the 80s when we had stagflation, we've had a pretty steady inflation rate. But when you look at education, you look at healthcare, and it strikes me that the increase in cost is outstripped what we've had otherwise. And I don't know how much that is driven by programmatic needs or building more. And I say it's a juxtaposition when I go to my college and I see all these great buildings, whether in grad school, law school, undergrad, wherever it may be, or just around here. We're building a lot of buildings, and I don't know if that's what we're getting out of that. And that's a long way around. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say, but other than to just make an observation that something strikes me funny, and I don't know how to articulate it. I'm sorry to go on, but something sort of gnaws at me. And I know that I'm not trying to single you all out. You're just here. And unfortunately, Shelley's heard me go on about this, as others, and I'll stop. But I just don't know if you have any kind of comment about that. I know we've been sort of wrangling with it. And I just sort of throw it out there. I'll have much more substantive and more direct questions for you, Shelley, when we come back. But that's why I raised my hand, and that's all. And I'll go back to, you can look at the bridge, and I'm here, and I hear what you have to say.
Certainly.
Well, go ahead, we're going to give you an opportunity to ask better authorities than me on this subject at the next meeting, because we're going to come with both the design architect, Foster and Partners, and with Canon, who is one of the true industry leaders in healthcare planning, so that they can provide you with the understanding of the ratio of the bulk of this building to the programmatic needs that are going to take place within it. And I think we look forward to your questions at that time. But I'd rather get the experts in the chair for you to ask.
Thanks,
And I just want to add something from a nursing perspective, if that's okay. So I foresee you receiving better information and answers to your question at the next meeting, especially with the designers present. But I can share that from a nursing perspective and from an operational perspective, and how we face our daily needs today. A lot of thought was put into the ratios. Right. And so you heard that. I've heard the term ratio used a couple of times already. And there is some sort of a method, right, to the calculating of needs of beds and post-op areas and pre-op areas. And there's a lot of thought that went into what it would take to support X amount of volume for X amount of patient over X amount of time. So just, I want you to feel comfortable and confident bringing your questions to that next meeting, but also, recognizing that a lot of thought was put into that. And in a way that we would be able to provide that patient-focused, patient-centered care in a way that the experience would not be minimized. Actually, the opposite, maximized.
I really appreciate that. And, it just struck me. One of the things that did strike me, and I know there's a logical explanation, is I forgot who made the observation. We're doing better at surgery in terms of being better at our results, but it's taking us longer. So, and again, the last thing I'm qualified to even speak about is anything involving a scalpel or anything related to science. But it struck me that if you're getting better at something, it would be faster. You know what I mean? And Shelley, in our profession, in legal profession, you do something enough times, you're faster at it, right? And so, and I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I was just kind of curious. That's what struck me. Anyway,
when we judge better, we actually are judging it by cure or extension of significant life. And one of the issues when look, we could all if we ever have a cocktail reception together, we could talk about the challenges of American healthcare. I'm not sure we'd reach any conclusions other than there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
The one thing that's very clear in cancer care is 15, 20 years ago, if you had advanced colon cancer, there was really one drug that was available. There was almost never surgery or other forms of therapy, and people lived an average of 4 to 6 months. And now for stage 4 colon cancer, the survival is somewhere between 2.5 and 4.5 years. But that involves, number one, a lot of drugs, some of which are still on patent and are expensive. It involves surgery in many patients, sometimes the implantation of little computerized pump devices to give drugs directly into the hepatic artery. There's a whole technology there. So, you know, the much less expensive care of the 60s and 70s wasn't as good if you were a patient in terms of your long-term outcome. And I don't pretend that we have the resources to give every form of care to everyone in the world or everyone in even our country. But I think that is the other issue when we think about cost, is we aren't giving the care. We could give the care of the 1960s really cheap and people wouldn't live very long. So we're trying to do better.
I appreciate I appreciate the thoughtful answer, and you all are always, you know, prepared. You know, Shelley's always prepared, so I know you've given a lot of thought before you've come here.
Well, and I would follow up on your question about surgical innovation, because the field of surgery is broad and very exciting. And you're absolutely right, Ed. There are some cases that we are turning over in a much more efficient process, doing with much smaller incisions, patients going home the same day. I mean, it's exciting. It's an exciting time. And at the other end of the spectrum, that's minimally invasive surgery, but we also provide sort of the maximally invasive surgery, cases that won't get done anywhere else if they don't come here. And that's where we're really pushing the boundaries in a different way. And those cases do take longer, and they take a lot of finesse and a lot of dedication to stick with the effort. And so in those situations, they are running longer, but we're providing surgery where it otherwise wasn't an option before. So it's such a great question. And I'm happy to talk about surgical innovation for much longer, anytime you want.
Right. Well, I appreciate it, and I look forward to the next series of meetings we have. So thank you all very much, and thanks, Shelley. Again, I'll go back behind the bridge here and eat up around. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed. Next, we have Adam Walt.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to all the professionals from MSK and Shelley for coming before us. I come at this from a little bit of a different perspective, and I love what you're adding. And Anthony knows I could care less about height. Build it taller. That'd be great. What I am a little concerned about is what's being taken away and is not being replaced. So we're losing 150 housing units in an area that is starved for housing. The district needs statement for year after year after year has been the need for more affordable housing. And the question is, what is the grand plan in order to provide this housing? Your neighbors went out and bought a site on the corner of 74th and York for $68 million. Cornell Weil did, in order to provide housing for their staff. And I'm wondering if MSK is willing to step up and do something similar. There are several development sites in the neighborhood that are on the market and available in order to purchase and build something similar to what Cornell Weil is doing. And I'm wondering if you're willing to do that and build the housing in the immediate area that you're losing with this project.
Adam, I think that, again, you'll see in the list of the bullets for May 18th, excuse me, that we're going to pick up on this subject. And our intention is to bring an MSK official who is responsible for housing to the meeting to be able to have that discussion. I'll only say as a placeholder that we don't know the Cornell Weil situation or the capacity of their current inventory, but the MSK current house inventory will be sufficient to absorb the units that are being lost by the demolition of Sloan and Scholars. These are not apartments, and these are not tenants in the classic sense. This is all contract housing. and the MSK has a robust inventory of contract housing, and the current projections are that this inventory will be able to absorb the loss of these two buildings. So there is a kind of net zero discussion here to have about MSK not taking housing offline or threatening other sites with the fact that those who might use these units will be displaced into the general market. This is a very closed universe here, and we expect that the net migration into the marketplace by the loss of these two buildings will be zero or close to it.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing where everyone's going and where all the housing is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. We have Nina Brody.
Thank you. I would reiterate, thank you. I think this was sort of touched on, but can you tell us what percentage of your patients are from New York and what percentage are not? And what your projections are with this? And obviously it's great to have an international recognized center here. It's terrific. I'm just wondering if this is going to be, is going to swing in a way when the new ORs come in as to more people from out of state and out of the country.
I'd be giving you a fairly approximate number, but I can tell you that 90+% of patients are local regional. And by local regional, I would include New Jersey.
Right.
But
that's
our patients greater than 100 or 150 miles, it's a single digit fraction of our total patients.
Oh, that's terrific. I didn't know that. Yeah.
It's not as much as maybe people think.
Okay. No, thank you.
Nina, MSK has facilities on Long Island and in Westchester and in Connecticut and New Jersey, but among all of those facilities, there's not one operating room or one inpatient bed. It's a system in which when surgeries are required from that regional network, they are all coming into New York. So that affects the number that you're hearing as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Nina. And that was actually an eye-opening response. I don't think maybe some people did, but I had no idea that it was that you all were that local. Okay, Elizabeth Rose.
Thank you, and apologies in advance. My husband and I are both sharing a small space, and we're both on the phone. So you may hear some background noise. I'd like to follow up on on actually both of the last two comments. The first, relative to housing, and I'm saying this mostly because I am unable to attend the May 18th evening event because it is my daughter is graduating from college. So good problems to have.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't think anybody questions the quality of MSK care or its purpose or its mission. We have all been touched by cancer. I have a sister-in-law who has recently been treated at MSK. I also have a niece who has been an overnight hospitalist at MSK. But for the fact that we were able to house her 2 blocks away, she would not have been able to do her job or take the job that she did because of the difficulties of housing in this community. So my first comment is that the response to Adam Wald's question that you will be net zero within your existing housing stock is completely different than the response to similar questions at the prior zoning committee meeting, in which we were told that you were working to acquire additional contract housing elsewhere in the community. And so what that suggests is that while you may be able to afford to acquire housing or to house the existing staff in the local community, that may still be at the detriment of others who are trying to also find housing in the community, and it is still net negative in housing to the community overall. So that's one. The second is that you're talking about this extension in you're at capacity, you need greater capacity. I suspect, and it would be useful to understand your projections on this, that to have greater capacity, you will also have more staff. And therefore, the notion that the current loss of those 150 plus units may be able to be absorbed. But that doesn't mean that the expanded staff won't also need housing or won't need additional housing. So again, this sounds like this is underthought and underplanned from a housing perspective, both just within MSK, but frankly, it is a loss to the community and it's a loss to the city overall. So even if you all can figure out how to be net neutral, it is a negative for the city. And we would all, I think, like to see MSK step up to serve its community and the broader community in this regard as well. Then following up on the comment from Nina Brody asking about where people are from and your response that there are no operating facilities elsewhere in the network. I would really raise the challenge of, well, why not? Given the explosion of cancer cases that you are talking about, wouldn't that ultimately become a very efficient way to meet the demand to build satellite or additional operating facilities closer to where more other patients live? The notion of solely funneling into one location for operations, I'm sure you view it as in some way very efficient, but in the long term, isn't what patients need are more options closer to their homes at the caliber that MSK provides. And the greater answer would be create high caliber in multiple locations rather than force everybody to come to one.
So I can maybe take a little stab at that, which is that we have 14 different services that do surgery in our operating rooms. And frequently we do what are called multi-panel cases. Dr. Gardner may have a big pelvic ovarian cancer and a patient may have a liver metastasis. I'm a pancreas and liver specialist. And so she and I may arrange to do that operation together on the same day to eradicate all of a patient's tumor. Or sometimes even we do 3-panel cases. So it's not simply that we can, put a surgeon at a spot and sort of let him hang out a shingle and do some surgery. It's a much more complex sort of scheduling issue and care issue to be able to provide this sort of complex care.
What percentage of cases are complex versus what percentage of cases are less complex?
I guess complexity would be in the eye of the beholder. But I don't mean to sound flip. We try as much as possible to do straightforward cases at our Josie Robertson Center, which is really an ambulatory and overnight stay facility. So by definition, what we're doing at the main hospital is generally more complex, requires multiple days, requires often ICU level care, at least for some period of time, at least the first night and sometimes for longer. And so again, the pavilion is really being designed to facilitate expansion of that population.
All right.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think in cancer care, we're increasingly realizing, we've known it all along, but it just comes even more focused, the importance of the team. And the team in cancer care is the expertise of the anesthesiologist, the support of the intensive care unit, the exquisite ability of our interventional radiologists to guide wires and to get to places, nursing, pharmacy, it's the team. And I mean, I agree with you. If we could fragment and just, drop in, it'd be great. And for maybe some easy stuff, sure. But the complexity of cancer care and the technologies that we are now that are being enabled in the surgical environment even more require the team effort. And that might be 2 surgeons, but it also requires sort of all the team that I just described to support, what's otherwise not done anywhere else. So the team has been a tremendous asset, and I think will only continue to be even more so as we move forward.
I'm going to apologize for stepping out. I know Shelley and Ginger and Jasenia will manage all the subsequent questions ably, and I'll look forward to seeing all of you on a subsequent task force meeting. Sorry,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to be leaving.
No, thank you. You are excused. Okay, do we have, who else do we have? Felice, do you have comments?
I actually have a couple of questions, and some of this may be things that are more appropriate for some of the sessions coming up. So just things to think about for the follow-up meetings. You talked about patient rooms and the patient rooms being designed for patient needs and the new patient needs, but can you talk a little bit about what that means? And then for later on, as you talk about, as we'll get into kind of the size and the bulk of the building, if there's a way in thinking about maybe some of the patient room floors don't need to be as high as the operating room floors. And I don't know if that actually makes sense in terms of construction. But if we could just get a brief explanation of what it is for the patient rooms that you have in mind. And I think you'd mentioned at the zoning and development meeting about the size of the rooms. I think they were 200 and something square feet, but if you could clarify that as well, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm happy to field what I can for you, Felice, and certainly we'll leave the rest to the upcoming team at the next meeting. I'm involved in the acute care med surge team and in looking at the bed capacity, and that takes on several colors, if you will, not just size, but also related to some innovations to support the care experience for a cancer patient, and just what I can share, and we'll leave the rest of the details for the next meeting, but the size of the room is relatively an industry standard. These are not, I'm sure we would all love for them to be, massive, but they're just not. They're relatively industry standard size rooms. And it's really beautiful in some of the conversations we're having about how to make that space patient-centered. I was on a call, I guess it was a week ago, and could we kind of track, some of these patients, they have so many needs and they're coming back to the inpatient for admission to the environment. Bowel is obstructed again and they're back. And can we kind of understand those soft touches that are unique to that patient and just have that in our system? That's like using technology to support the patient experience in a really unique way. So they like dimmer light, or they like, a certain ambiance or fragrance or whatever it is. So it's sometimes not just about the space, but how can we look at innovative ways to individualize and support in every way we can the build of these rooms so that it's current and modern and supporting what's otherwise such a challenging experience to be admitted with a troubling cancer and whatever the side effect that's requiring the inpatient stay. So I'm just sharing, like, some of the innovation that's happening in that space. But in terms of exact dimensions, I'm sure you'll talk about that next meeting, but my understanding is it's a relatively industry standard size. It's not something grandiose, although that would be lovely, but that's just not practical.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess one of the things that was mentioned earlier, I didn't fully understand. So there has to be a separate application on the number of hospital rooms. Is that part of the EULA process, or is that state regulations?
That is a state regulation. A hospital gets a license for a maximum number of beds. That doesn't mean they have to provide that particular number. It's an upper limit. And with every new project, there is a review at the state level for a so-called certificate of need. I know Barbara knows that system backwards and forwards. So it's not a ULURP issue, it's not a zoning issue, it's not a code issue. It's the State Department of Health that licenses hospitals to a certain number of beds.
Thank you. And you said earlier that single beds were the new standard or new requirement. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It is the new best practice and standard of care across within healthcare, I should say. So in order to meet that need, and as you can see, our recent pandemic highlights how important that need is. It is becoming more and more pivotal that with whatever future plans we do, that's incorporated and included in those plans.
Thank you. And then the pavilion bridge and connecting the two sides. So the new building will be operating rooms and patient rooms and support facilities. I guess the pavilion side will also continue to have operating, or the other side, I guess, will continue to have operating rooms and patient rooms as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the bridge is so that people can get back and forth between whatever services are on both sides.
Exactly. You got it.
Also, the main campus is, contains an enormous amount of space given to diagnostics and treatment. And patients in the pavilion will go use the bridge to gain access while they're inpatients for those treatments and diagnostics on the main campus. So it's going to be a very active bridge, but it's one that's limited to the patients and staff, and is based on their comfort and their safety.
Thank you. And then final, it's not really a question or more, just something I hope you'll talk about as we get into talking about the construction, is just how the overall construction of the building relates to the renovation of the existing facility. As you talked about the need to be renovating it floor by floor. So when we get into that topic, if you can cover that as well, I'd appreciate it. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. I apologize for my dog, and really appreciate your openness and your question and your answering our questions tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Felice. Just to sort of pile on a little bit, piling on's the wrong word. Tagging on to one of Felice's questions. If in fact, I think it's still a little unclear whether single rooms are in fact somehow legally mandated, or if this is just an expression of best practice. That's the first half of the question. And if it is the size of those rooms also, of hospital rooms, also governed by current best practices, or is that also somehow, the way the zoning resolution mandates the minimum size of an apartment, or is that somehow controlled by law? And it's a general question. I don't really mean to get get very specifically into it. It's just sort of wondering.
What I can say, Anthony, with confidence is that there are no zoning or building code regulations that mandate the size or the configuration of the room. After that, I'm way over my skis, and I really want to defer. I really want to get the experts in the room to be able to provide you with the answer to that question. I will say that there may be industry standards, but as you've heard here tonight, MSK is a unique institution with unique issues, and the extent of patients that they have that are immunocompromised is a serious issue, which does tend to drive the equation in the direction of single rooms, even more than best practices might, as a generic topic, might suggest. But we can bring those people to the table and ask them to give you an explanation, and then ask them.
Terrific, thank you. All right, Marco, I think has another comment. Go ahead, Marco.
Thank you, Anthony. Two things. And the first one is, Counselor, you offered to give the agreement. Did you send the agreement to the community board? This is one question. And the
I'm
second,
sorry, Marco, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what agreement you're speaking
you
about.
said
I
that
think
in
the
2004, you were in agreement of the development, and you mentioned a lot.
We have,
Please,
yes, we have
I would like to have that
provided,
one and read it.
we
Please.
provided to the community board office all of the documents in connection with the 2001 ULURP, where these initial discussions were held. It's also my understanding that these are all going to appear very shortly on an MSK website that we're opening up for the purposes of these discussions. And that website will also contain links to all of the 2001 ULURP related documents.
And finally, please, Anthony, let her go, Dr. Garner. She has better business to do, because I think we are wasting her time. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Obviously true. Do we have anyone? Oh, Alita.
Shelley, on the website, would it be possible to include answers to some of the questions that were raised tonight so that the community has a broader sense of information than just what the hospital's already planned?
Yeah, we'll be happy to talk about whatever enhancements we can muster. Obviously, this proceeding will also be available on the community. I'm assuming, looking at Will's box, that that'll be available on the community board's website as well.
Yeah, but that's asking a lot of people to read.
If we need to add to that in any meaningful way, we'll be happy to do it.
Thank you. And thanks again, everyone, for the presentation.
I just want to follow up to that comment from Marco. Thank you for that. But to be honest, this is no waste of my time. This is an important investment of my time, because I just think of all the patients that are in need. And to me, I want to make sure that we do this together as a community together. So I can't think of a more important way to spend my time tonight than with all of you. So thank you, Marco, but I'm going to turn it right back to you. So thank you for your time and this dialogue together. It means so much.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. And I think we now have, Alita, is your hand still up, or is your hand, Alita's hand just went down, and we have Michelle.
And I want to thank everybody. This was very productive, and I want to move to adjourn.
I see people agreeing. Felice?
I agree.
All right.
Thank you.
Seeing no objections, thank you again, Shelley and MSK. And we will see you in 2 weeks, or at least virtually see you in 2 weeks. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Good evening.
Thank you.